The stray pup had arrived at her door, refusing to leave. For 6 long years, after the Stanley family's downfall, Henry Stanley had shared her rented apartment, a silent anchor in a turbulent sea. She toiled relentlessly, earning every penny, while he, with an unsettling docility, managed the home cooking and cleaning. He was a perfect, obedient companion, a stark contrast to the pampered young master he once was. Then his father, a phoenix, from the ashes of bankruptcy, returned from overseas, now wealthier than ever. He offered her a staggering $10 million a bounty for her stewardship. With a jubilant heart, she ushered Henry Stanley into the opulent back seat of a Rolls-Royce, deliberately ignoring the shadowed, depthless gaze he cast her way. With a final dismissive wave, she declared, "Young Master Stanley endured 6 years of hardship with me. Now that you're prosperous, take care." That very night, clutching the golden card, she drifted into a dream of newfound fortune. Suddenly, an arm tightened around her waist, pulling her into a familiar, warm embrace. A breath, intimately known, feathered against her ear. "Sister, 10 million bought you off so easily. But you've slept with me for over a year. How shall we settle this far greater debt?" After Henry Stanley's father returned, he had discreetly presented her with 10 million, a silent recompense, for her 6 years of looking after his son. To refuse such a sum would have been foolish. The very next day, a deep conviction settled upon her. It was time to leave. She submitted her resignation, and her manager, sensing her unshakable resolve, granted her a graceful exit at the end of the month. After a brief handover, a thrill of liberation surged through her. Back home, she immediately began the application process for a prestigious overseas scholarship, her future stretching before her bright and unburdened. As her workday drew to a close, a series of messages from Henry Stanley illuminated her phone. "Sister, I've been so busy lately. We haven't been able to meet. I miss you terribly. I haven't even been able to hold you to sleep at night. It's truly unbearable. And you miss me?" Her fingers hovered over the screen, a perplexing internal debate. To say she didn't miss him would be a blatant lie. Once she had chided his clinginess, his possessive need to hold her close, even in sleep. Now the vast emptiness of her bed, her solitary tossing and turning, had stolen her sleep for nights on end. A profound sense of absence permeated the apartment, a quiet desolation. She rationalized this unsettling void as mere unfamiliarity. Yet whenever these inconvenient emotions threatened to overwhelm her, she would glance at the 8-digit balance in her bank account. A sudden cold clarity would descend, convincing her that perhaps she didn't miss him that much after all. Her reply was carefully evasive. "Young Master Stanley, you are so busy. There's no need to miss me. I, too, have many pressing matters." After a prolonged silence, a single enigmatic question mark appeared on her screen. Then another equally unsettling. "What did you call me, sister? Is this a new game? How exciting." She had no reply. She chose not to answer Henry Stanley. His mind, it seemed, could twist black into gold, rendering any rational conversation impossible. With a casual flick of her thumb, she silenced his incessant calls, putting him on Do Not Disturb. He tried several times, but she ignored every ring. At their usual small restaurant, Vanessa, her university roommate, reacted with stunned disbelief to the news of her imminent departure. "If you leave, what about Henry Stanley?" Irritation pricked her. "He's returned to inherit his family's empire. We are mere wage earners. Let's not waste pity on a CEO." Vanessa nodded slowly. "You have a point. To be a CEO, before even graduating, what a fortunate destiny. By the way, does Henry Stanley know about you going abroad?" A 2-second pause stretched into an eternity. "He doesn't need to know," she murmured, her voice barely a whisper. Vanessa, privy to the intimate details of her relationship with Henry Stanley, knew everything. She paused, then added, "If he asks, you must keep my secret." "Keeping secrets is no issue, but Juliana Windsor, if you suddenly vanish and he can't find you, he might just lose his mind." A tremor ran down her spine. "It won't come to that, will it? He's back in his grand villa. Why would he still search for me?" Vanessa slammed her hand on the table. "He's your first love. If his bright moon suddenly broke up with him and vanished without a trace, how could he not go mad? And what's more, from my observation, his gentle obedience in front of you, it's very likely an act. Perhaps you should talk to him clearly." Vanessa's words ignited a flicker of unease within her. Henry Stanley, with his faintly distant aura, preferred solitude, almost friendless. Yet whenever she introduced him to Vanessa, he would greet her politely, even accompanying them on shopping trips, without a single complaint. Vanessa's assessment had been chillingly accurate. He seems easy to talk to, but in reality, he's incredibly hard to grasp. A precise observation indeed. She recalled the year she took Henry Stanley in. He was just starting 10th grade. Girls flocked to him. Teachers had even called her as his guardian to scold him for receiving love letters. She, in her self-appointed role as an older sister, had lectured him to focus on his studies to avoid early romance. If true feelings arose, he must respect the girl, never bully her. She had talked until her throat was dry. Henry Stanley merely bowed his head, gazing silently at her. Finally, a faint smile and a whispered promise. I will listen to everything you say, sister. Who would have thought that the true fool was she? That night, the night he utterly captivated her, his every action was a testament to her teachings. Can I kiss you, sister? Do you want to be on top? It's all right, I'll listen to you, no matter what. He had truly lived up to his word, yielding to her every whim. They almost never argued. Such unconditional adoration was intoxicating. But these things she knew were never truly hers. To drown in them would only lead to sorrow. She waved her hand, feigning nonchalance, and clinked glasses with Vanessa. Let him be. Perhaps he already wanted to leave. Living in a rented room with me, washing my clothes, cooking my meals, versus returning as the young master of the Stanley conglomerate, even a fool would choose the latter. Vanessa sighed a heavy sound. I worry about you. Dating such a high-caliber younger man, who could you ever look at after him? She played along, grinning mischievously. Once I'm abroad, kissing a few Western mouths, who will remember what he looks like? These jesting words, it turned out, were spoken far too soon. For when she attended a corporate event, as a company representative, she saw him. Henry Stanley, standing amidst a constellation of admiring faces, instantly froze her in place. At the lavish banquet, Henry Stanley, in a perfectly tailored black suit, stood tall and imposing, his aura one of chilling nobility. He was 100 times more handsome than in the clothes she had bought him at the mall. The years he had spent by her side, she realized, had truly been a disservice to him. Ever since she had put him on Do Not Disturb, ignoring a few of his calls, he had ceased to bother her. The last message on her phone remained the "good night" he had sent at 2 in the morning 2 days prior. She hadn't replied. She believed that with time, their bond would naturally fade. Once she left the country, contact would become entirely unnecessary. She had not expected to encounter him so soon, and his father was there too. The room was filled with prominent figures from the business world. It was clear his father had brought him to network to forge connections. She hesitated, wondering whether to approach and greet them. Fear gnawed at her. What if Henry Stanley, upon seeing her, made an intimate gesture or uttered a misleading word? The thought was mortifying. But beyond the personal entanglements, the gratitude she owed his father for funding her university education remained. To encounter him and not offer a respectful greeting would be a profound act of ingratitude. She decided to wait until the crowd thinned. Yet, as she circled back, she discovered a new presence by Henry Stanley's side. A captivating woman, elegant and beautiful. They conversed, the girl's hand resting delicately on his arm, her laughter a charming melody. As she inclined her radiant face, Henry Stanley, his usual aloof demeanor softened, listened with uncharacteristic patience, a faint smile gracing his lips throughout their interaction. Coincidentally, she knew the girl. It was Miss Shen from the powerful Shen family, deeply connected to the Stanley family. The Stanley family's resurgence, it was whispered, owed much to the Shen's crucial support. She stood from afar, observing for a long time, then suddenly recalled Vanessa's words during their last dinner. A bitter, self-mocking laugh escaped her. What, first love, was truly unforgettable. At most, it was the inadequacy of subsequent loves that rendered the first indelible. Now, a rich young master paired with a wealthy heiress. A perfect match. What further concern could she possibly have? She had been overly dramatic, worrying for no reason. She averted her gaze. Draining the wineglass in her hand, she turned and left without a backward glance. The last flicker of hesitation in her heart had extinguished completely. Henry Stanley, as her former lover, was good, but she too was good. These 6 years had been nothing more than a chance encounter easily forgotten. He would ultimately return to the world that was his, and she too would embark on her new life. Past people, past events need not be remembered. The date for her flight was confirmed. Now at home, she meticulously packed her belongings. The lease on the apartment was nearing its end, and anything too cumbersome to carry would be sold off. Vanessa, upon hearing this, praised her pragmatism. To be so wealthy, yet still consider such trivial items. Of course. Frugality, where it was due, expenditure where necessary. That was her unwavering principle. Who knew when she might suddenly need emergency funds? She sat cross-legged on the floor, meticulously listing each item online. As the last of her tasks was completed, a fierce wind howled outside, ushering in a torrential downpour. She took a bath, changed into fresh, warm bedding, and nestled deep within her comfortable duvet. Her body relaxed. Her mind drifted to the burgeoning bank balance and the promise of a new life abroad. A peaceful slumber claimed her. In the dead of night, deep in sleep, a sudden embrace tightened around her waist. Her body instinctively leaned into the familiar warmth. A breath, intimately known, feathered against her ear. "Do you miss me, sister?" She jolted awake, her heart hammering. "Henry Stanley, are you insane? What are you doing here in the middle of the night?" She tried to rise to switch on the lamp, but Henry Stanley's strength held her fast, pulling her tightly against him. One hand cupped her chin, tilting her face up, before he leaned in and kissed her. His kiss was a deliberate, probing dance, deep then shallow, an inescapable entanglement. Only when she gasped for breath, her face flushed, did he slowly pull away. He buried his face in her neck, his voice a hoarse whisper. "Almost 3 weeks apart. I missed you so much. I nearly went mad." She froze. In the past, she would have playfully squeezed his face, teasing him. "Whose clingy little pup is this? Come on, let sister see just how much you missed me." But now, hearing the husky, vulnerable tone of his plea, the image of him standing beside Miss Shen flashed in her mind. A wave of sorrow washed over her. In the darkness, she lowered her head, a bitter, self-deprecating smile on her lips. Forget it. Recollection only brought further pain. The affairs of the elite held no bearing on her life. She forced herself to dismiss the unwelcome thoughts. At this moment, another concern weighed more heavily. Henry Stanley's effortless entry tonight was a lapse of her own. She had forgotten to delete his fingerprints. A task for later, she resolved. She pushed his arm away from her waist, flicked on the bedside lamp, and sat opposite him on the bed. "Henry Stanley, couldn't you have just called? Arriving this late isn't very polite. And does your father know you're here?" Henry Stanley, squinting against the sudden light, seemed taken aback by her question. After a moment of stunned silence, he offered a small knowing smile. "Are you feeling uneasy, sister? Are you afraid father will discover our relationship?" Of course. How could she not be uneasy? She had just accepted 10 million to facilitate his departure, and here he was returning of his own accord days later. If his father knew, he might suspect them of a scheme and elaborate trick. She had no desire to be accused of betrayal. Though these thoughts raged within her, her voice remained firm. "Why should I be uneasy? On the contrary, you're the one behaving this way. Aren't you afraid Miss Shen will be upset?" A rare expression of bewilderment crossed Henry Stanley's face. "You were fine a moment ago. Why mention her now? Huh." She hadn't even specified which Miss Shen, yet he was already protesting. Was he feigning innocence with her? Clearly wealth had corrupted him. Her once obedient pup-like younger brother had fallen. Her face hardened, a cold, humorless laugh escaping her lips. "I don't wish to discuss your affairs. Please leave now." Before the words fully left her mouth, she heard Henry Stanley's soft, chilling chuckle. "Sister, 10 million bought you off so easily, but you've slept with me for over a year. How shall we settle this far greater debt?" She froze instantly. How did he know she had received 10 million? Hadn't Uncle Stanley warned her to keep it secret, fearing it would reflect poorly on his family? And what was this about her sleeping with him for over a year? Seeing her speechless, Henry Stanley leaned across the bed, pushing his pillow closer. His gaze, burning and intense, fell upon her lips. His Adam's apple bobbed. "After so many days apart, you immediately chased me away upon seeing me. You are truly heartless, sister." She quickly recoiled, her hands pressing against his shoulders, desperate to create distance. "Henry Stanley, I truly don't have time for your games. If you continue, I'll hit you." But he acted as if he hadn't heard, taking her hand and placing it against his chest. The powerful thump of his heart resonated against her palm. Each beat grew faster, more urgent, until her own heart began to race in disarray. He guided her hand, holding it firmly in place, and spoke in a wounded voice. Sister, can you feel it? It misses you so much. Henry Stanley's unabashed gaze conjured a whirlwind of memories, specific moments flashing before her eyes. It was as if she was transported back more than a year. Even then, he had used that languid, tempting tone, a seductive refusal that was an invitation subtly drawing her deeper into his snare. She hastily withdrew her hand, forcing herself back to reality. Henry Stanley, my actions back then were a momentary impulse, a lapse of judgment. What happened between us? If you feel wronged, I can compensate you. Henry Stanley arched a brow. Compensate me. How do you intend to do that? Recalling the golden card tucked beneath her pillow, she gritted her teeth. I'll give you 5 million. Then we're even. A faint smile played on Henry Stanley's lips. So in your heart, I'm important enough to be worth half your fortune. But sister, we were together for 1 year and 3 months. Twice a week plus bonuses, that's at least 200 times. This sum won't buy me off. Her face burned, and she instinctively retorted, It wasn't that many times. Are you making things up? But he looked utterly serious. Each time was unforgettable. I remember every single one. She felt a surge of anger fueled by embarrassment. Whether you want it or not, get away from me and go back where you came from. It was clear he didn't care about 5 million. He was merely fabricating an excuse. A smile played at the corners of Henry Stanley's eyes, reaching his brow. She even wondered if her anger delighted him. All right, don't be angry anymore. I've been too busy recently and haven't had time for you. That's my fault. I just bought a necklace yesterday. It suits you perfectly. Let me help you put it on. As if by magic, he produced a necklace from his pocket. He gently lifted her long hair, his head bowed as he examined the clasp. She had been wasting her breath. He still believed she was merely sulking over his neglect. She pushed him away, her voice firm. Henry Stanley, we've broken up. Such a precious gift. I cannot accept. She purposefully emphasized the words, broken up, fearing he might pretend not to understand. Henry Stanley froze, then slowly raised his eyes. The smile in their depth had vanished completely. Broken up. What if I don't agree? Henry Stanley, whether you agree or not, no longer matters. It's just a breakup. There's no need to make it ugly. We'll both find new partners in the future. With a casual flick, Henry Stanley tossed the necklace onto the bedside table. The sound was not loud, yet it made her jump. He rose silently, his gaze fixed on her. A sudden chill of unease snaked down her spine. Was he angry? But he already had his Miss Shen. Why should he be angry with her? Since things had already turned sour, she felt a prick of irritation and coldly moved to open the door to make him leave. Unexpectedly, Henry Stanley took a long stride, his tall frame blocking her path. Trapped in the corner, the oppressive sense of his presence was overwhelming. She couldn't help but feel a flicker of panic. She fought to maintain her composure, staring at him with a chilling resolve. What are you doing? Are you going to lay hands on me now? Henry Stanley lowered his head, then opened his eyes. When he looked up again, a faint smile played on his lips, calm, yet utterly deranged. Sister, how can you utter such cruel words so easily? Is it because I haven't been around lately and you're angry? What can I do to make you stop being angry? Hit me, scold me. Or do you want me to kneel and beg you? She was too shocked to speak. This was their first argument, and she had never imagined he would resort to such extremes, let alone actually kneel. His hands braced against the wall, trapping her in a small confined space. He looked up, seized her hand, and brutally slapped himself across the face. A red mark instantly bloomed on his pale cheek. He turned his face, his eyes red-rimmed, yet still smiling. It's my fault for not caring when you mentioned Shen Weiwei. I deserve to die. Sister, there is no new girlfriend. I only have you. If you don't believe me, you can lock me at home. No, or how about we get married? After marriage, everything I own will be yours. With each word he spoke, her heart sank further. His posture was one of looking up at her, yet she was the one consumed by fear. She stumbled backward, desperate to escape. But Henry Stanley's movements were swift. One hand pulled her back, pinning her down onto the bed. Angry and ashamed, she bent her knee to kick him, only to have both her legs clamped tightly between his. The apartment's soundproofing was poor. She dared not scream, only lowering her voice to a furious whisper. Henry Stanley, let go. Do you not understand human words? Let go right now? But he offered her no chance to retort. kissing her with a frantic intensity. Henry Stanley knew exactly how to make her lose her mind. His slender fingers traced her waist, moving downwards. Her soft nightdress was flung onto the pillow. His kisses, leaving no gap, made her legs weak. She couldn't comprehend how things had spiraled so wildly out of control. A profound sense of helplessness shattered her defenses. She cried out his name. "Henry Stanley, please don't be like this. I'm scared." The suffocating pressure finally eased. He propped himself on his hands beside her, his head bowed low. Outside, the wind howled, and on her chest, warm drops of water fell one by one. Henry Stanley was crying. This was the first time Henry Stanley had revealed such vulnerability to her. Even when his family's fortune crumbled and he plunged from the heights of privilege, he had remained stoic, accepting the upheaval with an unruffled calm, never once mentioning his father. It was as if he was destined to share this cramped room with her, weathering 6 seasons together. Suddenly, a shrill ring pierced the air, shattering the heavy silence. She pushed him away, fumbling for her phone. It was Henry Stanley's father. "Julia, I apologize for disturbing you so late." She quickly composed herself. "Not at all, Uncle. Is something urgent? I wanted to ask, has Julia contacted you? The butler said he drove out this afternoon and hasn't returned yet. I called, but his phone is off." She turned her head to look at Henry Stanley. Caught off guard, he had fallen off the bed when she pushed him now. Sitting stunned on the floor, his eyes wet his lips, still bleeding. A profound ache settled in her chest. He. Seeing her bewildered state, Henry Stanley stood up, reaching for the phone in her hand. "Let me talk." She quickly covered his mouth. In the dead of night, if CEO Stanley discovered his son was here with her, how could she possibly explain? On the other end of the line, Henry Stanley's father asked, his voice laced with suspicion, "Is Julia, with you? I thought I heard his voice." She stammered, "You must have misheard, Uncle. That was just the TV. Maybe Henry Stanley's phone died. He's a grown man. He won't be wandering around. Don't worry, I'll call him. And if I reach him, I'll let you know immediately." "All right, thank you for your trouble. There's a board meeting tomorrow morning, and Julia must attend. If you reach him, please tell him not to be late." After she hung up, silence descended upon the room once more. She asked him softly, "Henry Stanley, why did you turn off your phone?" "Because it's annoying. Endless meetings, endless people to see." His voice was barely a whisper, devoid of joy or sorrow. She recalled his earlier clingy messages, claiming he was too busy, and missed her terribly. Perhaps he truly was exhausted. Otherwise, he wouldn't have braved the torrential rain, risking everything to see her in the dead of night. "Henry Stanley, go home. Don't make your father worry." His tone was cold. "Don't worry, he won't worry about me. He left for 6 years, never once asking about me." Their father-son relationship was delicate. She couldn't meddle much, only offer a gentle plea. "But he's back now, isn't he? Your father wants to make amends for you." Henry Stanley suddenly turned, his gaze fixed on her.
"Sister, if I return, will you leave?" She opened her mouth, but no explanation came. She hadn't even had a chance to tell him about going abroad, and the situation had already spiraled out of control. If she left without a word, if he couldn't reach her, then perhaps, as Vanessa had warned Henry, Stanley truly would lose his mind. She thought for a moment, then slowly began to speak. "Henry Stanley, our breakup has nothing to do with anyone else. You're simply returning to your own world, a world that has effortlessly widened the gap between us. No matter how hard I try, I cannot cross that threshold. If you keep indulging me, you'll eventually tire, we'll argue. It's better to end it now." Henry Stanley let out a soft, almost imperceptible laugh. "Sister, is that your reason?" She nodded, intending to continue persuading him. The next second, she heard Henry Stanley say, "It's not convincing enough. Such logic cannot be a reason for a breakup. You were the one who indulged me, the one who took care of me for 6 years. For me, you gave up your first choice university, stayed in the city for college. Then for me, you abandoned your graduate school plans. If I lose you because I returned to the Stanley family, I'd rather my father never came back at all." She froze instantly. She hadn't realized he knew everything. Back then, when she took Henry Stanley in, she was on the verge of university entrance exams. The academic pressure was already physically and mentally draining. Moreover, at the time, she didn't fully understand Henry Stanley. She spoke to him with careful consideration, treating him as the son of her benefactor. Young Master Stanley moved from a grand villa into a rented room. Fearing he would struggle with such a vast disparity, she meticulously cleaned and organized the tiny apartment,
even offering him the sole bedroom. To her surprise, Henry Stanley looked around, then took a mat from the corner and spread it on the living room floor. "I can sleep here." His adaptability astounded her. She told him she would treat him like a younger brother, ensuring he suffered no hardship. After her university exams, she discussed her university choices with her homeroom teacher. Her first choice was too far from Henry Stanley's school. Furthermore, her chosen major had a better program at her second choice university. The two schools weren't significantly different, so she decisively chose to stay in this city. Throughout her 4 years of university, she studied relentlessly. Besides attending classes, she worked part-time jobs to earn money. Without the Stanley family's support, she had to fend for herself, not just to care for Henry Stanley. Later, no matter how late she returned home, a warm meal he had prepared and hot bathwater awaited her. He was a younger brother who brought immense peace of mind. She even thought that if his father never returned, she could continue living with Henry Stanley as family. It wouldn't be a bad life. At that time, a company where she interned recognized her abilities and offered her a position before she even graduated. The salary was generous, but the workload was equally demanding. After much deliberation, she decided against pursuing graduate studies. Henry Stanley knew, and for over a month, he barely spoke to her. Then, during his second year of university, summer break, her project earned a bonus. She invited Vanessa and him to a fancy dinner. Ultimately, Henry Stanley still carried her home. That heavy rainstorm was just like tonight. She lay sprawled on the sofa, still giggling foolishly, overjoyed at earning so much money for the first time. She told him that once she saved a little more, she would buy a big house, and they would live there together. Henry Stanley remained silent, preparing her a glass of honey water before heading to the bathroom to run a hot bath. He then scooped her up and carried her in. He stood outside the door, cautioning her to be careful. Her worst fears materialized. No sooner had he spoken than she tripped over her clothes and fell. Before she could scramble up, Henry Stanley burst through the door. She saw the raw panic on his face. He froze for a second, then quickly averted his gaze, his face flushing crimson to his ears. After she finished her bath, Henry Stanley knelt by the bed, applying medicine to her bruised knee. His palm was incredibly hot, a warmth that left her utterly flustered. A flash of lightning streaked across the sky, and she flinched, trembling with fear. Henry Stanley instinctively covered her ears, telling her not to be scared. Their eyes met, and some unspoken, unexpressed truths shattered completely in that moment. She couldn't recall who had kissed whom first. Finally, as the heavy rain subsided, she drifted off to sleep. When she awoke the next day, he looked at her with red-rimmed eyes, uttering not a single word. His gaze was so intense, it made her profoundly uneasy, compelling her to upgrade their relationship to lovers. From then on, things spiraled beyond control. He clung to her at every opportunity. When the novelty began to wane, she felt physically and mentally exhausted, as if all her strength had been drained. After much haggling, they settled on twice a week. When they were together, Henry Stanley indulged her boundlessly, and she in turn confidently reveled in his care. Until Henry Stanley's father returned to the country. He spoke of making amends to Henry Stanley, then handed her $10 million, thanking her for taking care of his son for 6 years. A sudden clarity struck her. This relationship had to end. Henry Stanley would return to his own world. In that world, there was simply no place for her. She had just never expected Henry Stanley to be so deeply enmeshed. Seeing his devastated expression, her heart ached with a profound, choking sorrow. Finally, she sighed and confessed. "Henry Stanley, all of this was my choice. I have no regrets. I don't want to deceive you. I truly must leave for a while. But you in this state, I'm a little worried about you." Henry Stanley's eyes lit up. "Where do you want to go, sister? How long will you be away? Just tell me the time. I can wait. I want to study abroad, 3 to 5 years, but it's not certain." Henry Stanley nodded. "All right. Which university do you want to attend? Have you applied for admission? Can I visit you when I miss you?" She started to speak, then stopped herself. "Henry Stanley, it's also possible I won't come back." If she found a new job abroad, how could she expect him to wait indefinitely? She couldn't do that. She had to make him aware of all the risks. After listening, he pondered for a few seconds. "It's fine even if you don't come back. For the past few years, Father's main market has been overseas. I'll call him now and tell him to put me in charge of it." As he spoke, he actually pulled out his phone, ready to make the call. She quickly pressed her hand down, stopping him. Henry Stanley, don't be like that. I'm not that important. Don't make me your everything. Don't make me think you can't live without me. She lowered her head, staring at the floor, her mind a tangled mess. Henry Stanley lifted her face, looking directly into her eyes, enunciating each word. Juliana Windsor, you will never know how important you are to me. Do what you want. I won't hold you back. She looked at him, and suddenly her eyes welled up with tears. Her conversation with Henry Stanley had utterly failed. She couldn't reason with him, and she no longer had the heart to continue. Thankfully, he heeded her advice and messaged his father. Having endured this emotional turmoil, she was utterly exhausted. It's very late now, and the rain outside is too heavy. You should go shower and then sleep. Seeing that she was no longer chasing him away, a smile finally appeared in Henry Stanley's eyes. The sound of water running in the bathroom filled her with an inexplicable restlessness. She vaguely felt that everything was beginning to spiral out of control. The bathroom door creaked open, and Henry Stanley poked his head out, calling her. Sister, could you grab me a towel? She almost forgot. When he moved out, she had packed all his belongings, leaving not even a hand towel. What would he wear after his shower? She rummaged through the closet, pulled out a clean towel and a long dress. You'll have to make do for one night. Oh, Henry Stanley suddenly pulled her into the bathroom, then closed the door. Steam swirled around them, and his toned muscles were right before her eyes. Her face burned red, and she turned away, not daring to look. Henry Stanley, stop joking. If you keep this up, just go home. He ignored her, seizing her wrist, pinning her against the wall. He pressed closer, demanding more than she had conceded. Sister, it's raining heavily outside. It's dangerous for me to drive home. You agreed to let me stay. You can't go back on your word. He was doing this on purpose, too close. She could distinctly feel the change in him. Her heart raced erratically, and her words came out in stutters. Stanley, Henry. Stanley, wrap the towel around yourself first. We can talk slowly. He said nothing, took her hand, and traced it down his abdomen. Just as she was about to speak, he lowered his head, silencing her with a kiss. His fervent kiss threatened to steal her breath. She lost all sense of self, her legs turning to jelly. Henry Stanley quickly wrapped an arm around her waist. You clearly like me, yet you still want to chase me away. You really know how to bully me. Tonight, say my name. Say, I like you. Many times, all right? Over the past 6 years, Henry Stanley had taken impeccable care of himself. 183 centimeters tall, with perfectly sculpted muscles and seemingly boundless energy. She found herself pleading. It's 3 in the morning. Let me sleep. I'm exhausted. Henry Stanley's voice was hoarse, but his question was unwavering. Do you like me? Like you? Yes, I do. Don't break up, all right? She still clung to a sliver of rationality, closing her eyes and feigning unconsciousness, refusing to answer. Both their breaths had long been ragged, yet Henry Stanley's rhythm remained steady. He slowly brushed the damp strands of hair from her forehead, his fingertips tracing her eyes and brows. A blunt knife prolonged the agony. Better to end it swiftly. The wise woman knew when to yield. She opened her mouth, a choked sob escaping. No breakup. No breakup, all right. In the darkness, Henry Stanley chuckled softly, a sound filled with the smug satisfaction of achieving his goal. All right. I will always belong to you, sister. With that, he lifted her face and kissed her, drawing her deeper into the haze of desire. The next morning, Henry Stanley cooked pear soup to soothe her raw throat. She glared at him, annoyed, urging him to leave. Henry Stanley, having sated his desires, was in an exceptionally good mood. He raised his hand, checking his watch, and said gently, There's still time. Let me drive you to work first. She quickly refused, her voice still hoarse. I'll take the subway. It's faster than you driving. If I'm late and make your father suspicious, it will only cause more trouble for me. Henry Stanley's eyes darkened, and he shook his head with a sigh of resignation. Let's have dinner together tonight. She vaguely agreed. We'll see. After he left, she slung her bag over her shoulder and hurried to catch the subway. The rush hour commute was a suffocating crush of bodies. She leaned against the door, headphones on, eyes closed, seeking a moment of respite. Henry Stanley, being young and with certain aspects of their relationship so perfectly aligned, a momentary impulse to not break up was perfectly normal. But a person couldn't live solely on desire. Eventually, one had to face reality. Once he graduated, he would take over his father's company, meeting girls from families of similar standing and education. He said he would wait for her, but she dared not believe him. In this world, the only thing she dared to rely on was herself. After her last day of work, Henry Stanley's father contacted her, inviting her to dinner at a restaurant. A myriad of thoughts flashed through her mind. Had Henry Stanley told his father about their relationship? If his father questioned her, demanding to know why she had slept with his son, how should she defend herself? She racked her brain the entire way, arriving at the restaurant door without a single clue. She decided to risk it to confess everything. After all, his father was her benefactor, the one who funded her education. She couldn't lie to him. In the spacious private room, only Henry Stanley's father awaited her. The moment she entered, she apologized. Uncle Stanley, it seems you know everything. I'm sorry. Know what? Henry Stanley's father looked utterly bewildered, as if he knew nothing at all. She too was confused. Seeing her standing still, he waved her over. Come sit down quickly. I have a favor to ask of you. She quickly swallowed her confession. Henry Stanley's father, with a flustered expression, spoke awkwardly. Julia, you know the relationship between Julia and me has become distant these past few years. I've found a few girls from suitable families and want to arrange dates for him, but I'm unsure of his preferences. You've spent a lot of time with him. Please help me see which girl he might like. As he spoke, he pulled out a few photos and placed them before her. She stared blankly for a few seconds before realizing he wanted her to help choose Henry Stanley's future wife. An indescribable discomfort washed over her. She gave a dry laugh. Uncle, wouldn't it be better to ask Julia about this? His face fell and he sighed heavily. You know Julia's personality. Except for meetings, I barely see him. I can't even get him to agree to dinner. He completely ignores me. I thought if you could help me pick a good one, then I'll invite her to meet Julia. With you there, he'll surely come. All right, now she was expected to play matchmaker for Henry Stanley. Her hands, hidden beneath the table, nervously gripped the edge of her skirt. From her understanding of Henry Stanley, he would likely explode on the spot, directly announcing their relationship. She dared not imagine the scene that would unfold. She weighed each word carefully before speaking. Uncle Stanley. Before she could finish, Henry Stanley's phone rang. Not her phone, but his father's. She saw his father raise a finger, motioning her to remain silent. Hello, son. Where did you take Juliana Windsor? The private room fell silent, and she heard every word of their conversation distinctly. Henry Stanley's tone could not be described as pleasant. Oh, how did you know I invited Julia to dinner? I was planning to ask you to come over later too. Send me the address. And before I arrive, don't say anything nonsensical to Juliana Windsor. After hanging up, Henry Stanley's father looked at her with a strange expression. You tell me this child, why is his temper growing worse by the day? It's as if he thinks I'll do something to you. She forced a smile. Perhaps it's a misunderstanding. When I first met you, he was still in kindergarten. Now he's closer to you than to me. It's truly a world turned upside down. She was extremely tense. She lowered her head and pulled out her phone, only then realizing he had called her 3 times and sent numerous unread messages. She quickly scanned them. It turned out he thought she was working late tonight and had planned to pick her up on time. He hadn't known it was her last day of work with no overtime. Her colleague had told him she had already left. His reaction was incredibly swift. He immediately called his father. She no longer had the presence of mind to care about anything else, and quickly messaged Henry Stanley. Don't be agitated. Your father isn't here to cause trouble. He just wants to discuss something. His reply was instantaneous. What does the old man want with you? How could she dare to tell him his father wanted her to help him choose a future daughter-in-law? He just asked about you, said you were rather cold to him, and he was a little hurt. He's pretending. Don't pay attention to him, sister. I'm almost there. She looked up, meeting the distant gaze of Henry Stanley's father. Her heart skipped a beat. She wished she could burrow under the table. It was a complete mess, an absolute disaster. She had only wanted to quietly accept the money and study abroad. Who could have imagined it would turn out like this? It was all Henry Stanley's fault. Why had a single encounter become so utterly serious? The already tense atmosphere, coupled with Henry Stanley's rushed arrival, only intensified. The moment he stepped through the door, he rushed to her side, lifting her face to examine it carefully. Are you all right? From beside them, his father's heavy, cold huff echoed. Her mouth twitched, and she pushed Henry Stanley's hand away. Henry Stanley turned, looking at his father. Father, are you too idle? Why did you call sister here? Don't you know she's afraid of you? His immediate aggressive attack left his father speechless with anger. Henry Stanley, what are you saying? What could I possibly do to Julia? What gives you the right to say she's afraid of me? Juliana Windsor, are you afraid of me? Tell him. She quickly waved her hands. No, I'm not. Then she turned to reason with Henry Stanley. Henry Stanley, don't be angry. Uncle is very kind. Your attitude should be better. Henry Stanley let out a small derisive chuckle and sat down beside her. You still claim she's not afraid of you, father? She's never spoken so humbly before. Don't always use those years of helping someone to bind them with moral obligation. If you want to inquire about my affairs, ask me directly. Why involve sister? His father, being questioned so harshly in front of her, lost all face and immediately slammed his hand on the table. Fine, then you explain. Why did you lie to Weiwei that you already had someone in your heart and intended to marry right after graduation? Where is this person? Where is she? You just made it up to refuse the blind date I arranged for you, didn't you? Uncle Shen even called me privately, scolding me for not clarifying things before setting you two up. Henry Stanley's father spoke in one continuous breath, leaving both of them stunned. What was happening? She turned to look at Henry Stanley. He calmly took her hand under the table, then placed it onto the tabletop. That person is right here, and she was even introduced to me by you, father. Henry Stanley's father was utterly bewildered, and she was completely speechless. Henry Stanley's sudden revelation sent his father into a profound silence. Her heart felt like cold ashes. She dared not lift her head. It was over, she thought he would surely say. That year, I helped you with your education, only asking you to look after my son for a few years, yet you slept with him. Truly ungrateful. A white-eyed wolf? How could the Stanley family ever marry a penniless orphan with no family background? Yet she found she couldn't be angry with Henry Stanley. He loved her with genuine sincerity, openly declared their relationship, and protected her unconditionally in front of his father. Conversely, when she faced trouble, her first instinct was to abandon him. In this relationship, she was the most selfish one. How could she possibly blame him? She resigned herself to facing the scolding together. With that thought, a flicker of courage ignited within her. She squeezed Henry Stanley's hand tightly, offering him a small, reassuring smile. A sudden round of applause echoed in the room. Excellent, excellent, excellent. This boy, I can't believe you managed to win over Julia. You truly are my son. His father's excited expression was strangely familiar, exactly like Vanessa's face when she learned about her and Henry Stanley years ago. I always thought Julia wouldn't give you the time of day with your strange temper. I thought you were destined for a contract marriage your whole life. This boy, you truly made me see you in a new light. A flicker of impatience crossed Henry Stanley's face. Are you done talking, father? I need to take sister home now. His father waved a dismissive hand. Not so fast, I've already ordered. Let's have dinner together. Henry Stanley turned to her, his voice softening. Do you want to have dinner with him? She looked at him, then at his father, and nodded. Yes. What else could she say? Could she really say no? After dinner, she finally learned that Henry Stanley's father was eager for him to take over his company, because Henry Stanley's own company had just gone public and was developing rapidly, even threatening to surpass the Stanley conglomerate. This presented an opportunity to merge and expand the corporate scale. His father smiled throughout the evening, urging them to set a date quickly. This girl, Julia, I trust her completely. That you two can be together, I'm happier than anyone. I'll tell your mother when I get home so she can see that I alone also raised you very well. As his father spoke, his voice grew thick with emotion. Henry Stanley had never mentioned his mother to her, and she hadn't realized he, too, had lost his mother young. Henry Stanley maintained his cool demeanor, his dark eyes unreadable. When the meal concluded, the driver arrived to pick up Henry Stanley's father. Henry Stanley insisted on returning with her, their hands still clasped together, unwilling to part. The night wind swept through the streets, carrying with it the hurried footsteps of passers-by. Some walked together, others bowed their heads, rushing onward. She had once believed that her entire life would be a solitary struggle, a relentless pursuit of work, seeking only to build her own confidence, never daring to dream of someone becoming her anchor. Tonight, the atmosphere was perfectly poised. She had also shared a few drinks with Uncle Stanley, feeling a slight buzz, her courage emboldened. At the intersection, she and Henry Stanley waited for the traffic light. Beneath the flickering yellow streetlights, Henry Stanley stood beside her, his tall form casting a shadow shielding her from the light. She looked up, realizing Vanessa had been absolutely right. This man, the more she looked, the more handsome he became. He cooked for her, lulled her to sleep, cried for her. Without her knowing, he had quietly orchestrated their future. Now that she had grown accustomed to his devoted care, how could she ever love anyone else? She rose on her tiptoes, wrapping her arms around his neck. Amidst the bustling street, she kissed him. Henry Stanley was surprised, but quickly deepened the kiss. He was always like this, never letting her down. Henry Stanley, perhaps I'm not as good as you imagine. Will you regret this someday? He pulled her into a tight embrace, the strong thump of his heart resounding against her chest. It's a coincidence. I'm not as good as you imagine either. But together, we fit perfectly. His gentle voice soothed her anxious heart. She closed her eyes, wrapping her arms around his waist, and whispered into the night wind. All right, no matter what happens in the future, we must stay together. She heard Henry Stanley chuckle softly in reply. Of course, I will love you forever. Check your epilogue. Henry Stanley's perspective. My father's bankruptcy was an inevitable cascade long foretold. I had warned him early on about his choice of personnel, but he never listened. He even wanted to drag me overseas to escape the storm's wrath. I refused. I simply told him to find me a place to stay anywhere. I never imagined that with a single phone call, he would summon Juliana Windsor. The girl's radiant smile upon hearing she had to take me in immediately froze on her face. Her lips twitched, and she reluctantly nodded her agreement. I was defeated. Handing me over to a high school student? What was he thinking? As Juliana Windsor and I left, he didn't even turn his head. Juliana Windsor, for the sake of convenience, rented a small room near my school. It was tiny, barely larger than my study at home, yet she kept it meticulously clean. When she offered me the only bedroom, I froze. An inexplicable warmth bloomed in my chest. Only later did I realize that was the first stir of true emotion. From childhood, no one had ever given me anything. I looked at the slender girl before me, her face small as a palm, framed by bright dark eyes. Her nose, delicate and smooth, was dotted with a faint sheen of sweat, brimming with a vibrant life. She was nothing like the impoverished mountain child my father had described. How could I possibly sleep in a girl's room? But then again, the floor tiles were truly hard. Juliana Windsor seemed to possess an inexhaustible wellspring of energy. She not only attended classes, but also worked tirelessly, often so exhausted she could fall asleep standing up. Sometimes I would gaze at her face and wonder, how could such a delicate frame hold so much vitality? Her relentless pursuit of money was utterly draining. I offered her my school scholarship, but she refused it, stating earnestly, Henry Stanley, this is your money. Save it. You'll need it for many things in the future. Though we're a bit tight, now life is manageable. Only 3 years older than me, yet always pretending to be so mature. I didn't want to be a burden on her, so I began to help with the cooking. When Juliana Windsor returned, she was so moved she nearly cried. She exclaimed, Henry Stanley, you're amazing. This tastes so much better than my cooking. I felt my ears burn. It was nothing special, just adequate, but I never told her that all the failed attempts at noodles had ended up in my stomach. Cooking and cleaning were tedious chores. But when Juliana Windsor came home and praised me, I found the time invested to be incredibly worthwhile. When did I become so superficial? When did I start caring so much about another's opinion? When did everything begin to change? Perhaps it was in my 12th grade. A classmate gave me a love letter, which I casually slipped into my desk drawer. My homeroom teacher discovered it and called me into the office, giving me a serious 30-minute lecture about avoiding early romance. What a joke. If he knew how much debt my family was in, he'd understand my struggles. Early romance. All I wanted was to graduate quickly and start earning money. But my homeroom teacher wasn't reassured. He insisted I call a parent. Juliana Windsor rushed from her part-time job, still carrying the sweet scent of bubble tea. I lowered my gaze looking at her. Since when had she become so much shorter than me? Her eyelashes fluttered, her nose was slightly damp with sweat. Her lips were pink and they looked so soft. What was I thinking, damn it? It was all the homeroom teacher's fault, bringing up early romance out of nowhere. It nearly made me lose my composure when Juliana Windsor came to talk to me that night. She looked as if she had prepared for this. She used herself as an example, speaking about the confusions of adolescence. She said she wasn't worried about my studies telling me not to repress myself. It was normal to desire romance at 17 or 18. Dating was fine, but I must respect girls. Was she serious, sister? I hadn't even opened the letter. If the homeroom teacher hadn't opened it in front of me, telling me to see if it was a joke, I wouldn't have known what was written. But her voice was beautiful. I listened patiently, nodding occasionally, playing along. Watching her lips open and close, my mind reeled, and I suddenly asked, if I wanted to kiss her, would that be disrespectful? Juliana Windsor froze, lost in thought, and finally racked her brain for an answer. Kissing is acceptable, but only with the other person's consent. After all, you've already studied biology, and boys often discuss these things amongst themselves. I don't need to say much, but anything excessive is not allowed. I looked into her eyes and said I understood. Some desires, hidden for too long, will eventually reveal themselves. I had hinted countless times, but sadly, she never saw it. Eventually, I realized that Juliana Windsor, in matters of love and sex, was utterly naive. I wondered where she had learned all those teachings she imparted to me earlier. It didn't matter. I had time to wait. During this period, I had to excel. Otherwise, as she became increasingly outstanding, I feared I would not be worthy of her. My first time with Juliana Windsor, I did employ a slight stratagem. That day, she was drunk, grumbling about wanting to buy a bigger house for me. What man could resist such words? My heart was pounding so fast I thought it would burst. When I carried her home drunk, my hands were trembling. But I never expected her to slip and fall in the bathroom. Seeing the bruise on her knee, I secretly cursed myself for being a beast, losing control whenever I saw her. Then, a clap of thunder startled her, and she opened her wide, innocent eyes to look at me. I ask you, what man could resist? When the woman he secretly loved looked at him with such eyes, I couldn't. I admit it. I kissed her first, but she closed her eyes, offering no resistance. I was grateful that I possessed a decent appearance, something that could temporarily bring her joy, although she wasn't gentle in her approach. But as long as she was happy, I would be even happier. My relationship with Juliana Windsor began to unravel the moment my father returned. I sensed it vaguely, but felt utterly unable to escape. He insisted on introducing Shen Weiwei to me. What a joke. If Juliana Windsor saw that, would I even be allowed back home? He caused nothing but trouble. Just merge the companies quickly and stop wasting my time. But I never expected it was already too late. Juliana Windsor misunderstood. But instead of asking me, she chose to give up on me entirely. This was what I found most unacceptable. I thought I held a certain place in her heart. I had overestimated myself. Yet, what drew me most to her was precisely that self-reliant, self-loving aspect of her. Fortunately, she only wanted to study abroad. I, of course, agreed 100%. As long as we didn't break up, everything else was fine. I had an entire lifetime to spend with her. What surprised me even more was that the ultimate helper turned out to be my father. On the day Juliana Windsor and I got engaged, my father was even happier than I was. In truth, I don't resent him. My mother left early. What would a man know about raising children? But I am different. I understand. Because those who have lacked love are often the ones who best know how to love others. So, Juliana Windsor, I know your struggles. I understand your perseverance. You must believe me. You deserve all my love.